Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the Crypto Talks podcast. Today I have a very interesting guest, a guest which, as he mentioned, his name is very hard to pronounce, just like mine. I changed mine, by the way, because mine was so hard to pronounce, actually. But so, how do you pronounce your name again?
It's Ofir Beigel.
Ofir Beigel. Yeah, well,
Yeah, exactly.
okay, so Ofir is from Israel and he's the founder of the website 99bitcoins.com. Many were familiar with this. I've come across your website because many people were referring to it as a place to go to if you are a newbie in a space and want to learn the basics and then, progress further. So it looks like an awesome resource. But before we get there, what's your backstory? Where, I'm sure the Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain are relatively new spheres. So
Yeah,
what were you doing before you got into it?
yeah. So actually, it's a funny story because I actually come from a very different background than most people in the space. I come from an internet marketing background. I
Okay.
used to be what's known as an affiliate marketer for a long time, since 2009. And I think that around 2013, when I first kind of like heard about Bitcoin, I was actually sitting unemployed in my house, kind of like looking for what to do. And I came across this article on TechCrunch talking about how an anonymous cryptocurrency just passed the $1 billion market. And they were talking about Bitcoin at the time. There was this Cyprus financial crisis, which spiked the Bitcoin price from, I think, $30 to 250. And I was saying to myself, okay, this looks like an interesting business opportunity. I mean, if something is written on TechCrunch, then probably people are starting to pay attention to it. So maybe I'll start up a site about it. I had no interest in Bitcoin. I didn't even know what kind of like the underlying technology is, what the whole vision of Bitcoin is. I just wanted, to try to make a quick buck when I started out. It was not as ideological as it is for me today, but
When
that's how
was
it
it?
started out. This was on April 2013.
Wow. Okay.
Um, yeah, and I just started like this very ugly. It wasn't even called 99 bitcoins. I'm ashamed to say how it was called. In any case, but it was just like a one page explaining how to buy Bitcoin with PayPal, which is things that people are still trying to find out how to do today because it's a very tricky process. Just explaining like in 2-3 sentences about what the currency is and then how you can buy it. And
No, no,
the
no.
funny
Wait a
thing
minute.
is, I
Now
did,
that you say
yeah,
that, we need to know how it was called.
yeah. It was a very spammy domain name. I'm ashamed to say it was called Bitcoin with PayPal.com. That's the name of the domain before it became 99 Bitcoin. Actually, I was fortunate enough that PayPal apparently sends you an email if you have their name in your domain name.
Yeah.
They send you an email telling you that you legally can't have that domain name, and if you renew it, they will sue you. So that actually was kind of like the catalyst to change the name to actually something more normal, which was then became 99 bitcoins. But at the beginning, I really didn't pay any attention to it. It was just like a side project that I put up this one page website, and I basically let it lay there. And what happened 6 months after that, or yeah, around 6 months after, maybe 7 months, that was in April 2013, the second Bitcoin boom came at the end of 2013 when Bitcoin spiked $1,200. And then the site started to explode with traffic. And I was like, okay, wait, there's something here. Because before it was just like a nice side project. And then I decided to start taking it a bit more seriously. I turned the site to 99 Bitcoins. I started to cover a lot of more stuff about wallets, about Bitcoin's history and stuff like that. And throughout these years, as I was progressing and dealing with it, I actually, I somehow magically got infected with the Bitcoin bug. So it started to become like a true ideology for me, and I understand kind of like the vision behind Bitcoin. And today, it's much more than just a business venture for me. This whole kind of quest to teach people about Bitcoin.
Okay, sounds good. So basically, you said in the beginning you weren't interested, and then when you got into it, you started looking, learning much more. I call this process, personally for me, this process was like, falling down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
How did it feel for you? What was the learning curve like? How fast did it go? How did you feel? Like how things changed from not being interested in the whole thing into getting into it full time?
Yeah. So it's hard to say. I can't say that initially I was just, learning stuff. I was somewhere on the curve between copying and pasting what I read and didn't really understand, just, rewriting it. And at some point, the way I look at it, I really like to teach, not just crypto, a lot of stuff. And the way I look at it, when you try to write a tutorial or review or anything, you have to break it up down to a point where you really understand it in like layman terms. So even I can explain it, I don't know, to my grandmother, she'll understand that. And that was kind of like my mission all the time. Even when I wasn't that enthusiastic about it, it was just, okay, let's make this better. Let's make it much more understandable. But at the beginning, it was very technical. I'm just trying to make something understandable. Now, after maybe a year and a half of running the site, I came to like some sort of I don't know how to call it. You can say it's a breakdown, although it wasn't that harsh. I started thinking, okay, maybe I want to do something else. I don't want to deal with this because this still wasn't my passion. And I was starting to think about, okay, what can I do? Maybe I can start another website. And I actually thought about selling the site back then. And in the end, I ended up doing all of these, reading these books about, your purpose in life and stuff like that. And I have no idea what happened. Just like after I had this talk with a friend of mine, and suddenly I understood that, okay, I want to start advocating for Bitcoin in Israel specifically, because like the same like Andreas Antonopoulos does around the world and has these amazing talks and breaks everything down so clearly, so easy to understand. I said, okay, this is what I want to do just in Israel. So I started to say, okay, let's create a Bitcoin beginners talk and start spreading the word. And I started doing that. And as I started creating this talk, I had to go much deeper into the what I call the psychology of Bitcoin and why is this interesting and what was the idea that this whole thing was brought up upon. And then it started to kind of like I had this aha moment of, oh my god, this is like really, really interesting, like this is going to change the world. And I started to learn about macroeconomics and things that's happening around the world and why now is the time that Bitcoin is really so important. Besides the exchange rate, the exchange rate isn't that interesting, that the actual ability to have an alternative to the banking system, all of that kind of like, it took me like, I think like 2 concentrated months of where I read like 5 different books on macroeconomics around the world and saw all of Andreas's talks and, read Mastering Bitcoin and read everything I could find about it. So it's funny because most people say, when they first hear about Bitcoin, they go down the rabbit hole and do this process. For me, it happened like 2 years after I was dealing with this daily. Then I got this process of kind of like reading and watching videos and listening to podcasts and stuff like that. And then what happened is I had this 45-minute to 1 hour talk ready that I'm still doing today in various places around the country. And for me, this is even, each time I manage to go into a room, talk to people, it could be a room of 5 people, it could be a room of 300 people. But when I manage to explain to them why this is important, the technology, why we need an alternative to the banking system, that is probably the biggest thing that fills me up from what I'm doing, from my whole work today.
So it's interesting. I mean, could I conclude that you actually got inspired and more interested in the topic once you decided to inspire others about that?
Yeah, I think that I never thought about it like that, but yeah, I think that is actually, it's not because I inspire others, but because in order to inspire others, and that was kind of like my main mission, I had to really, really understand the topic in depth, not just from a technical perspective, from like we said, a psychological perspective or a more philosophical perspective. And I think that's where, if you manage to reach that point in Bitcoin, where you don't look at the price anymore, you look at what's happening in the world, what's happening with money, and so what's needed and what's the solution that's needed. I think that's where the aha moment really comes, and that's where it kind of like struck me. So it's not the fact that I wanted to inspire that got me inspired, but it did lead me into the process, which later on kind of triggered that.
Oh, interesting. So, I mean, it's called 99bitcoins, but is it just about Bitcoin or in crypto generally? Did you broaden up the borders, or you got just specifically niched down to Bitcoin only?
So it's a good question because we started out, I started out, now we're a bit like, we're 6 people here in the company, but I started out only about Bitcoin because I understood the value, later on at least I understood the value, I understood kind of like, I mainly look at adoption. When I look at a cryptocurrency, I don't care how good its tech is, I don't care, what vision it brings to the world. when it doesn't have adoption, it's irrelevant in my opinion. It might have adoption later on, but at the moment, if a cryptocurrency, you know, all these ICOs going around, if something doesn't have adoption, I don't even take a look at it. And that's why a long time I focused only on Bitcoin. By the way, mainly from a business perspective. I said, okay, this is what people are interested in. There's nothing else at that time. It was Litecoin and you had Dogecoin and all of that, but they weren't as interesting. Later on, as the market evolved, mainly in the last 2 years, then we started spreading out, you know, to Ethereum and also maybe Litecoin, and writing a bit about ICOs, but not about specific tokens, just about the concept of ICOs in general. But I have to say that personally, from a business level and from a personal level, I still believe, that Bitcoin is the only mind-blowing currency out there. Ethereum, for example, is very interesting. It's a very interesting concept, but it's not as mind-blowing as Bitcoin. That's kind of like the way I see it. That's why I still focus most of my efforts on Bitcoin. And sometimes I do, you know, if people have questions, and I do write a post about other currencies, but most of the content focuses on Bitcoin. Lately, we started kind of like digging deeper into Ethereum as well. So right now, I'm starting getting these same aha moments I had for Bitcoin on Ethereum, but it's still not as mind-blowing as Bitcoin.
Oh, I see. So, I mean, you started 5 years ago. Back then, many people haven't even heard about the whole concept, and it was very new. It wasn't a hot topic, so it was an unpopular thing to do in the beginning. How do you think the perception of people of Bitcoin has changed in the past few years? Because I'm sure before the way they looked at it was completely different. What is the difference in their mindset these days?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that most makes me laugh, like throughout the days, because, you know, once you have this perspective of like 5 years and you go into these in these boardrooms and, you know, all these like very fancy people, investors, and everybody's like today, yeah, you know, this is going to change the world. This is the next new thing, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. And I remember how it was like 4 years ago when I was going around telling people, you know, even at casual parties or at poker games, just telling people, look, yeah, I have decided about Bitcoins. And remember them telling me like, yeah, that's a fad. It will never work. Nothing will happen. So you can really see how people change their attitude. The very nice thing to see today is that almost in every aspect, you can see Bitcoin starting to kind of like get more and more adoption. So you can see, you can see billboards that people are advertising, and they accept the payment in Bitcoin. See it from my business. I can pay for almost every service I want today to run my business, whether it's servers, advertising, hiring freelancers, writers, or stuff like that in Bitcoin or in some sort of cryptocurrency, maybe Ethereum or Bitcoin. And, you know, the main issue is like the talk on the street. So even my grandma now, you know, already knows, kind of like heard the name Bitcoin and kind of like know basically what it is. So that's kind of like very nice to see that it you know, Google, if you mistype Bitcoin on a Word document or in Google Docs, and you have, you know, like that red line that says that it's misspelled, it autocorrects Bitcoin. So it's in the glossary, what wasn't back then, like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So it's like, you know, a lot of other people said before me, it's here to stay. The genie's out of the bottle. It's really nice to see this whole. It was very, very interesting. I felt when the internet first came out, I was like 14 years old or something like that. And I wasn't old enough to understand the revolution that's going on. But now I'm at a place where I am old enough to understand, and it's very nice to see how it's, you know, how that very famous sentence, like, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win, how it's actually playing out. That's like really interesting.
So you see the similarities. It's the same trend and the same journey as with internet back then.
Well, like I said, back then I didn't pay that much attention to what was going on. But when I take a look now and I research, you know, the news articles that were back then, and see kind of like I remember actually my own experience with the internet back then. I remember, you know, the first time I got a modem to my house, or the first time I saw a browser, I was just like, okay, I'm going to this one website, which I knew back then. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was AOL. And then I'm saying, okay, well, there's not much to do here. I mean, there's just this site and that site, and that's basically all I'm doing here. And if anyone would pick up the phone in the house, it will drop down the whole internet connection. That's how it worked back then. Um, so you see similarities, in the general psychological evolution of stuff. People are, ignoring it in the beginning and say it will never work, and slowly, kind of like starting to build the trust in the technology.
Clear. So, I mean, these days, because it's a hot topic and popular thing, many people who weren't involved start getting in. So we have a big flow of new people getting attracted to the idea, probably getting attracted, although you say that the price is not relevant, but to this possibility of making loads of money.
Yeah.
And everything that happens around them, all these success stories, overnight billionaires and all that stuff actually attracts people into the field. Do you think this space is for everyone? Is it really something that pretty much anyone can get into, or there are specific personality types that would work much better in the space?
I don't think the space is for everyone. I think like the same as any other thing. Now, I think if I understand correctly, you're currently asking me about kind of like Bitcoin as a form of investment. Is that kind of like what you're asking? Okay. Yeah. So I don't think that this space is for everyone. I think that the same as you invest in anything else, you have to understand what you're investing in. Now, from the 5 years I've been in the space, I've met a handful of, let's say, Bitcoin millionaires. I don't think I've met any Bitcoin billionaires yet, but Bitcoin millionaires. And all of them are people who understood why they're investing in. None of them have become an overnight millionaire because they say, oh yeah, Bitcoin is jumping to, I don't know, 1,200, let's invest. And they cashed out in time and now they're millionaires. I mean, there might be like one or two lucky investors who manage to do that, like just because they don't understand what they're doing. But most of the people who are today millionaires due to Bitcoin is because they understood early on what other people didn't. They understood the technological improvement. They understood the financial ramifications. The same thing that you have people who actually managed to make money in the financial crisis of 2008. You know, that movie, The Big Short. So it's the same analogy. These are people who knew where to look, who saw that things were happening macroeconomically, who saw this technology, who saw its adoption and said, okay, this is a good investment. And they understand the technology. People who just say, oh, the Bitcoin is going up, and you see so many people like that. Yeah, Bitcoin is the thing. And just investing on trying to make a quick buck. I'll give you the best example. I've been in Bitcoin since 2013. I started investing in Bitcoin, personally, my own personal money, in 2016, 3 years after I first saw the currency. Why? Because I understand that they don't understand it good enough. So people who are just all about the price and you can get richer out of that, personally, and maybe there are some like these, I don't believe there's a lot of millionaires like that running around. There probably might be one or two lucky people, but it's money in general. Money in the world has a way of kind of like pinpointing people who are, I don't know how to call it, lazy or don't do enough research, and avoiding these people, and and contributing to the people who do put in the work, who do understand, who do kind of take the time and patience to understand what they're investing in. By the way, that's the same reason that personally today I don't invest in anything other than Bitcoin, because I still don't think that I understand it good enough. Ethereum, I'm just now starting to kind of like go down the rabbit hole. So once I understand that good enough, maybe I'll invest in Ethereum as well. But at the moment, I'm not at that point. So that's why I think Bitcoin isn't for everyone. I think that at the moment, at least, and this is a rough estimate that like 95% of the population shouldn't be investing in Bitcoin, in cryptocurrencies. The same way that, by the way, 95% of the population shouldn't be investing in real estate in, I don't know, in Ohio, because they don't understand about that anymore. So that's kind of like the analogy.
Clear. Well, I mean, it's very interactive, so we can't blame them. I mean, with what they see, they really want to get into it. What I've noticed.
By the way, I did the same mistake when I first started out. I bought my first Bitcoin at the height of a peak at $1,200, and I sold it at like $300. But then I said, okay, look, you don't understand what you're doing. Don't invest in this. Wait until you understand it good enough.
Yeah. It's a classic thing that people do. They buy when it's high because they think that it will go higher later on. They want to cut their losses, and they sell when it's low, and then they repeat several times, and they lose eventually everything. So what about the? I mean, in order to get mass adoption, things have to be quite simple to grasp and to do. Like even if you end up with someone who wants to buy a Bitcoin, it's quite an experience. It's like, not really straightforward, really intuitive, and the user experience of many of the exchanges or websites that give you that opportunity isn't really that comprehensive and smooth. And I always was thinking, like, why is that? Because making it simpler, even making the person take the same steps, but having a better design, a UX, like simpler, comprehensive explanations, shouldn't be that hard to do. Is it because there is no need for that, or is it this artificial barrier people want to keep in between the newbies getting in, or why do you think that is?
I think it's just a matter of how the technology evolves. I'll go again, back to I think Andreas put it perfectly. I think he said it in one of his lectures. He said, "Imagine now we're back in 1994, and I tell you, like, there's a new thing called the internet, but in order to get into it, you have to download some sort of this program called the browser, and then once you open that program, you need to go up in the address bar and you need to type in HTTP." And then : / and then www. How stupid does that sound? Today it's very intuitive, but back then you say, oh my god, that's too complicated. Why don't I just click a button and get where I want to get to? So this is just an analogy, but at the end, this is how technology evolves. What we're seeing today with Bitcoin is the base layer, is the first layer of the Bitcoin network. So this is basically the bare bones of the network. It doesn't have any nice user interface. It's all very clunky. It's all very slow. Once the technology evolves, it's the same way you have the internet without the World Wide Web, without the browsers. Mm-hmm. So when I got the internet, I wanted to connect. I think it was called, I don't remember the name, but I wanted to connect to some other person around the world. So I don't even remember today what I did back then. I don't know how even I had that knowledge, but you write some lines of code, and then the modem would do all of these funny sounds and the stuff like that. And you'd connect to someone on the other side of the world, and you start chatting. But it was very, very complex. Today, you download Facebook Messenger and you start chatting. Yeah. Back then, we were using the base layer, like we're using today in Bitcoin. In 10 years, we won't be using this. We won't be using these ugly addresses. We won't be waiting 10 minutes for confirmations, because we will have stuff like the Lightning Network, which works instantly. And people will start creating, out of the need, applications that are much, much more user interface friendly and intuitive. It's actually funny. It's connecting to what you said before about people investing in a price. But I think, first of all, people need to understand that price is, by the way, is a result or a byfactor of technology. If the technology is good and useful, then the price will follow. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like the same, kind of like going back to understanding what you're investing in. But the second thing, which is more relevant to this question, is I think that greed is one of the best tools for adoption. Because when people are saying, oh my God, I got to invest in Bitcoin, then okay, what the hell's going on here? How do I start? And then they go to sites like 99bitcoins and read on the Bitcoin wiki and see videos on YouTube, and they start understanding how the technology works. So kind of like the greed, the need to get rich, gave them actually a very nice present of teaching them about the technology and the need, even though that wasn't their initial intention. Mm-hmm. But in 5 or 10 years from now, it won't be, at least that's the way I see it, and it won't be as hard, it won't be as slow, it won't be as complicated. And it's the same thing like if I asked you today, can you explain to me how the internet works? You probably can't, in a technical level, but you don't know how to use the internet. So it's the same thing will probably happen with Bitcoin.
Okay, I see. So do you think Bitcoin and crypto in general changed the mindset and perception of money the way we had it before?
I think it definitely changed the perception of money for all the people who really understand Bitcoin. I can say for myself personally, I don't look at fiat currency. This is our fiat currency here in Israel. So I don't look at this paper note as the same way as I looked at it before. For me, it's much more like just a piece of paper today. And I see it in every interaction I have, whether it's with the government or buying stuff at the store or anything. I think for the majority of people who aren't in this place of kind of like understanding the tech, the kind of like the ball is starting to drop. They're starting to understand that. I see more and more people understanding that the US dollar isn't backed by anything other than the US government's trust. And that gold is probably much more valuable than just pieces of paper that are flowing around as fiat currencies. So I think the revolution is starting. We're definitely not there yet, but I can see from my talks with other people, more and more people understanding, and I can see that they're actually more and more open to accepting the Bitcoin message because of what's happening in the world, because of all these financial crises that are happening. And people are seeing that something isn't working. People are seeing that they're working for the same wage for the past 10 years, but prices are just rising. So something here isn't working. So they're much more open to accepting maybe even a very radical solution like Bitcoin.
Okay, I see. Well, when I said to one of our listeners that I'm going to interview you, he asked me to talk about the Bitcoin obituaries and how many times Bitcoin was proclaimed to be dead soon and all that stuff. And probably by what you're saying, people are getting more optimistic about it these days now. But what's the picture? What's the story behind that?
Actually, I think more. The funny thing is that more obituaries are coming out.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think in the past 2 months we had more obituaries than in the last 6 months or year. I don't remember. I just remember somebody commenting on that on Reddit. But I think that's exactly what the stage we're at. This is exactly the stage that then they fight you, for example, or you could say in the past it was they laugh at you, because in the past most of the articles were just Bitcoin is a joke. These are actual titles. Bitcoin is a joke. Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. Bitcoin will never work. Here's why. Blah blah blah. Today, most of the articles are much more let's say fact based and much more going in depth. Why Bitcoin can't work on a technical level and stuff like that. At the end, it's funny because it seems to me it's kind of counterintuitive, because you'd think there would be less obituaries, but I guess it's just because it's getting, at the end, the media looks, I know it because I run a website. Yeah, the media websites are looking for people to visit their sites. So they're trying to write as stuff as radical as they can, and to get people angry and to get people mad, to get people afraid. What's known in the community as FUD, as FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So I think that's why you have more obituaries today than you had in the past, because this topic is getting really big, and media websites understand that you can get more people viewing their website if they put up some FUD piece up. But on the other hand, and I read these obituaries, I think almost 99.9% of them, I'm trying to think if there's something that doesn't fall under this category, can be very easily contested against. You can very easily see that the writer usually doesn't understand Bitcoin on a very basic level, or they don't. People are the main obituary you get today is, no, it's not Bitcoin, it's blockchain. Bitcoin isn't the really important thing. Blockchain is the important thing, and that's also bullshit the way I see it. But that's kind of like the main. People are saying, no, we accept this whole revolution of decentralization, but we're more interested in Bitcoin and in the blockchain, but not in Bitcoin. It's not very sexy to say Bitcoin. It's much more sexy to say blockchain. So that's kind of the main obituary you have today. But I guess so that's basically how it goes. It's very interesting to see. There's a lot of correlations you can do. When the price goes up really high, then the obituaries also go really high, and then most of the obituaries are actually aimed at the mass majority, who are like the stupid mass majority who don't understand what they're doing with the investments. And these times, like now, when Bitcoin is relatively stable and not doing anything, then there's not a lot of obituaries because it doesn't gain a lot of media attention, so they kind of like forget about it.
Okay, clear. So, I mean, obviously, your business is around the subject. You're also inspired about the whole thing. How much of your day is dedicated to the topic and the sphere? Is it like, it's overtaken your whole life and you're completely and totally into it? Because I, for example, know some traders who are glued to the screens 24/7, and they have nothing else. I mean, it looks like an obsession, an addiction, and they don't have any other life aside from what they're doing.
So I think I need to separate this to two different aspects. On the work aspect, I don't like to work that much. I
Okay.
like to work smart and not hard. So I try to optimize my time schedule. I try to get maybe to delegate a lot of stuff. I try to understand what's the 80 like the 20-80 rule in my work and
Yeah.
where should I put the most focus. So just so you get an idea, I work 4 days a week and 6 hours each day. That's not a lot. That's how much I work. But that's just work on the side. If you now take how much I'm involved in Bitcoin outside of my work, that's probably a lot more than that. Because I do a lot of talks, which I don't consider work, because I consider kind of like some sort of a mission for me. And just updating in news, in crypto news, which is very interesting to me. Just learning other stuff, like I'm learning a bit more about Ethereum at the moment. Talking about this with people, going to meetups. There's a lot of stuff that I don't consider work because they aren't really relevant that much to 99 bitcoins as a site and whole operation, but that I do because on a personal level, it really interests me. So, at any point of time, if you wake me up at night, I'll probably know to tell you what Bitcoin's price is, but it's not, again, I'm not a trader, so I'm not glued to the screen because of that, but it's just because I'm very interested in what's going on. So that's kind of like the two aspects, the personal aspect and the work aspect.
Okay, clear. So, if you look at it from the other perspective, when people are getting involved in crypto in general, you mentioned ICOs a while ago, and ICOs seem to be the most affordable way to get into crypto, because usually in the beginning the prices for these coins are very, very cheap, but at the same time I think they are the riskiest investment in crypto in general. So what is your perception? I mean, I have conflicting views on ICO, because I was involved with our project and company in an ICO. So I really love the fact that there are no gatekeepers, that you can escape the VCs, that you can end up with actually getting the money to build what you dreamed of. At the same time, putting myself in investors' shoes, I also understand that there are many who don't really read the white paper, who don't really do research. They just buy the coin because someone else told that it's a cool thing to do, which means that not always they are making educated decision in that sense. Yeah. So in general, ICOs, the fact that they are out there, the fact that many companies are raising millions through that. What does it bring to the field? Is it something positive or negative, or where does it go? Things are changing in that field as well.
Yeah, so I'll give it a disclaimer first. I don't like ICOs. Just kind of like in a very short sentence. That's my take. Or I'll be more precise. I don't like ICOs at the moment. The way they're. I haven't invested myself in any ICO that I can tell you. So that's also, I'm saying it as a downside, by the way, because I haven't experienced the whole cycle. I'm only kind of looking at this from the outside. But again, I'm saying, okay, I don't think this is a good investment. So why should I risk my money in order to learn a bit more about this? I will say that I probably should invest in an ICO just to learn the process, maybe one time, see how it goes. But I think I see it pretty clearly from the outside as well. The reason I don't like ICOs at the moment is because I think the model isn't structured right, economically speaking, or psychologically speaking. Meaning, I'll tell you how I see it. I see it like a bunch of people saying, "Hey, we have an idea. Let's raise some money." And instead of going to VCs or going to professional investors, who first of all can give us really good feedback, and if we take their money, we are obliged to, at least on a moral sense, we're obliged somehow to give them a return over their investment. We're going to people who have no idea, or at least most of them have no idea what we're doing. And also, we're not binding ourselves with them in any legal way, meaning they have no control over our company. They don't get shares in the company, which they would get in the VC. So basically, me as an entrepreneur, I get all the money and none of the risk. And also, like you said before, I get the opportunity to raise it's called FFF, Friends, Families, and Fools. That's the only people. So I basically raise only fools' money in some sort of way, and probably friends and family as well. So it's the easiest way to get money today. And again, it's piggybacking on the same thing we talked about before. The main feeling of greed, people wanting to get rich quick. Mm-hmm. And what you said before also about people, it's more affordable to ICOs. People think it's affordable, but if you do the math, it doesn't really matter. If you take $100 and invest it in an ICO or invested in 0.00001 Bitcoin, or however $100 is worth today in Bitcoin, you can invest in both. It doesn't mean that with the $100 you can't invest in Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin is right now it's 6,495. It doesn't mean you can invest in a fraction of a Bitcoin. It's not that Bitcoin is not affordable. It's just people in their mindset say, Bitcoin is so high, I probably won't be able to make that gains. Again, it's just greed. Mm-hmm. But with great reward comes great risk also. So that's kind of like the way I see ICOs. And hopefully in the future, there'll be, first of all, much more regulations on the company doing these ICOs. Because, because I'm a media site, I get a lot of, if you'll see 99bitcoins doesn't cover any ICOs. We did it once or twice and we just stopped doing it because of this. I get a lot of requests from ICOs. And I see what's going on behind the scene, and it doesn't look good.
Potential income lost there.
yeah. But I see the way they act, how they treat money, the easiness to throw money away, and that's why I don't want to give a hand to that. Mm-hmm. So that's where we are today. Hopefully later on we'll have more regulation. Maybe the ICO model will change a bit, or people will start understanding that they have to be more accountable to their investors, and maybe just as natural evolution, people will invest less and less in ICOs because they understand how risky it is, and then only the really unicorn ICOs will stand out and people will invest in them. By the way, one thing that's happening now with ICOs is that less and less ICOs are going to public sale. Mm-hmm. Most of them are like closing it in a private sale for accredited investors, and people will actually understand what they're doing. So that's getting to a better place than it was before.
And the amounts raised are being reduced. We don't get 100 million ICOs anymore, which is a good sign as well. And I think with the changes that come over, companies tend to be forced to be more responsible in that sense. I mean, legally still it's not binding. You just sell the token, and once they get the token, the relationship is over, so to speak. But in general, it feels like more and more companies realize the need of approaching it from different perspectives, just psychologically and in terms of responsibility as well. So when we spoke during the whole interview, I kind of realized this common topic that we touched here and there all the time about the need of being educated, about the need of being knowledgeable, and really understanding the sphere first before getting into it, before investing, before claiming to be an expert, which many do these days without even having a clue what's going on. So the logical question is, if someone wants to get educated, what are it's overwhelming. There are so many resources out there, so many books, so many podcasts, so many websites. So apart from 99bitcoins, which are the credible, really good quality resources to go to?
Well, first of all, I think Andreas's book, Mastering Bitcoin, even if you're not a developer, I read it and I'm not a developer, is very, very eye-opening, understanding how Bitcoin works. And also his other, talks on YouTube, and he also has this Internet of Money book, which is basically the talks compiled into a book. I think I'm trying to think. Most of the things today, it's really hard to say because there are so many sites out there, but usually most of them have some sort of an agenda. Personally, for me, I can tell you what I do, but it's not relevant for people around the world because it's specifically an Israeli Facebook group which I use, which is called Israeli Bitcoin, which I basically go and that's where I get my news and people explaining stuff. And if I have a question, I ask there. And also the Reddit, the r/Bitcoin subreddit. But that's probably also not very a good place for beginners because they just throw out all of these hash stuff that people are already talking about. I think Blog Geeks, which is also another big website. It's probably I've now when I'm reading about Ethereum, at least I use a lot of the content to learn, and I see that they've done a really nice job in kind of like breaking things down. And at the end, I think that the most important thing when you're learning, doesn't matter really where you're learning, because the way I do it, I don't just go to one resource. I open like 5 different websites, I read them all, and then I try to just write down whatever I remember, or more importantly, I try to, why do I write this down? Because I'm trying to write a post to explain to my readers. So that's basically something that if you want to see if you understand something, try to explain it to someone else, because, or at least write it down in the explanation. Then you'll see where your black holes appear, where are things that you don't, okay, but I don't get, why is this, I don't know, why is, what is this exactly? Where does this part fit in? And you'll have more questions. Then you go and kind of like research. So that's kind of like the best maybe advice I can give to someone who's trying to get to the bottom of this. Once you finish reading or from a few different resources, then go in and try to explain it to someone, or even write a post about it, explaining to other people. One thing I will say, which sounds like a shameless plug, but I'll put it anyway. We have this 7-day video course on our site, which we try to promote, which we just basically one video a day for 7 days, which hopefully you'll learn like 90% of what you need about Bitcoin. So, we talk about, and it's each video is pretty long. It's like 12-minute video, which is pretty long to watch videos these days. But we talk about what is Bitcoin, the Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin wallets, and how the whole network works together. And he tried to keep it on the core concept. So just for Bitcoin. For other stuff, I assume that, like I said, Andreas and BlockX are really good resources.
Okay, clear. So to wrap it up, I'm just gonna, I can't ignore this question, so I'm gonna ask you, what do you think about crypto influencers, and do you consider yourself being one?
What do you mean by what do I think about crypto influencers? What's the...
Well, the crypto influencers, all these people who have big audiences on YouTube and are, sharing their expertise and forecasts and thoughts about this field, and are followed by tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. What do you think about them? How, is it even there a way to understand who's genuine, who's paid, who's pretending?
Okay. That's I think I'm not sure I can answer that question as accurately as I'd like to, because I started so early. I don't really follow that many crypto influencers. I do see on Twitter time to time people who I kind of like. I'm not that much on Twitter, but from time to time I do kind of like follow specific people. In the end, you have the whole range from people like John McAfee, which has all these crazy tweets, and you're not sure actually what's going on there, to other people, which I now, by the way, remembered according to your last question, BTC Sessions, which is another guy who does awesome YouTube videos about Bitcoins. So he also kind of like tried to explain stuff. So you have two ends of the scale here. I think, it boils down to who, when I take a look at someone's tweet, and sometimes, I read these tweets from people who I don't know who they are, but I see they have like a lot of audience. I just try to see if there's any substance in it. When somebody's talking fluff, you can kind of feel it in your gut. And when somebody's saying something that has substance, or that's why Andreas is so popular, because he doesn't have that much fluff. Then you can really see that. So in the end, it comes down to the way you feel with the gut feeling you have with that person. One thing you asked about, if I'm an influencer, personally, I don't think that I'm that much of an influencer, as much as 99bitcoins as a brand is an influencer. Because I think that up until today, we've managed to touch like millions of people that went through the website, and over 100,000 people who went through that crash course that I just talked about. So I think that we do manage to reach a lot of people. But again, you won't see us, we do have an agenda. I mean, for example, we didn't speak about this, but we believe that, like I said, I'm much more of a Bitcoin maximalist. I don't believe that much in Bitcoin Cash, for example, stuff like that. So we do have an agenda. We're not like totally unbiased, but you won't see us pushing at that much, so like a lot of other influencers are doing. So that's basically it.
Okay, clear. So, just another reminder, if you want to check out the awesome website, it's 99bitcoins.com, 99 with numbers. So, I'll add it in the show notes as well. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate for reaching out and recording this interview. And I hope that we will be in touch in the future.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed being here.